Magmaw. A tank must stay in melee range at all times. Tank swap on Mangle. Range and healers stack on one side of the room. A pillar of flame will spawn, run to the other side of the room. After a few seconds the pillar will explode and adds will spawn that will fixate on players. Kite and slow these before they reach their targets. When Magmaw uses Massive Crash, try to move out of the way of where it is slamming. Have 2 or 3 melee jump on Magmaw and use the launch hook ability. Repeat until you win. Heroic. Meteors will appear. A big ad will spawn from it, either have a third tank picking these up or misdirect them to your current tank. They do a frontal and start casting an explosion when they're low, so nuke them down when this happens. At 25%, spread out as shadow bombs will fall on each player, dealing AoE damage. Nuke the boss before this kills you. Omnitron Defense System. The boss order of this is random. You will at most have 2 bosses active at one time. When one boss's energy reaches 50%, it'll have a unique shield for itself, and another boss will become active. You can swap to the new boss every time for simplicity. Arcanotron. Interrupt Arcane Annihilator, move out of the power generator circles, DPS stand in. On Heroic, this pool explodes after a while. Its shield will cause attacks to give it a buff. You can spell steal or purge this. Electron. Spread out to reduce electrical discharge damage. If you get the lightning conductor debuff, move away from others. On Heroic, Shadow Infusion. This causes you to deal massive raid damage the further away you are. If you get lightning conductor at the same time, just move back into the raid and pop some healing cooldowns. Its shield will cause big AoE raid damage when attacked. Swap off. Magmatron. Casts acquiring target on a random player. After a short while it will blast you with fire damage. Try not to have anyone stood between you and the boss. On Heroic, this roots the target so everyone has to move away or freedom the player. Does big AoE flamethrower. Heal this. When the boss puts up barrier, stop attacking. If the shield gets burst, it's a wipe. Toxitron. Drops chemical clouds that cause you to take 50% more damage. Move out. On Heroic, these clouds now deal damage and the raid will sometimes be pulled into it. You can drag bosses into this though. Oozes will spawn and fixate players. Kite these around and DPS them down before they reach anyone. Its shield will deal nature damage per hit, but also imbue your weapons with poison, causing you to do more damage. Watch your stacks, you may want to swap off of this boss when it casts shield. Chimaeron. Talk to the gnome to start the fight. This will spawn a robot giving you a buff that whilst you're above 10,000 health, any damage you take cannot kill you. As such, you only need to heal people above 10,000 health, apart from your off tank. Everyone spread out around the room. Caustic Slime will impulse massive split AoE damage, and also reduce your chance to hit. The boss will put a debuff on the tank that stacks up to 4 times. Every now and then the boss will cast double attack. It is recommended for the main tank to take the stacks of the debuff, and the off tank to taunt the double attack. Then the main tank taunt back. The boss will cast Massacre throughout the fight. This is a big AoE. Every 4th Massacre, the bot will die. The boss will stop melee attacking. At this point you'll be vulnerable to the slime split AoE, so stack up and split the AoE damage and get some healing. Spread back out when the bot is alive. When the boss reaches 20%, it'll enrage, become untauntable, and begin chasing the lowest threat targets. You can't heal in this phase, but since the bot will be alive, it'll take 2 autos for the boss to kill you. Spread out to kite the boss and nuke it down before it wipes your raid. On Heroic, the boss will continue to attack the tanks throughout the whole fight. There will also be a pulsing AoE damage in the last phase, so make sure everyone is topped off before the final 20%, as you now have a hard cap on how long you can keep this phase going. Atramedes. You will get a new icon on your interface for this fight, a sound bar. You want to keep it as low as possible. You do not need to worry about tail swipe. Position your group like this. The boss has a massive melee distance, melee in one group and ranged on the opposite side of the boss. Split healers equally. The boss will periodically cast Sonic Breath. This will focus the target with the highest sound. Whichever player is focused, run one way, whilst your group runs the other way. The more sound they have, the faster the breath will chase them, so you can outrun this mechanic at lower sound. The boss will send out small AoE circles. Avoid these. When the boss casts Searing Flame, you want to have someone next to one of the gongs. Click it to interrupt the cast. It stacks and does a lot of damage. The gong will also reset everyone's sound level back to 0, so if you need to, you can use the gongs for this too. The boss will also be stunned for a short while and take more damage. On Heroic, ads will spawn on players. Swap to these and nuke them down. When the boss flies up into the air, it's up to you to avoid stuff on the ground. The boss will cast Roaring Flame Breath, which is a beam of fire following a player. It'll gather speed as it's being casted, and is also increased based on how much sound the target player has. You'll probably need movement speed to get away from this. If you do not have enough movement speed, have someone who can run fast assigned to click a gong. This will transfer the aggro onto them. On Heroic, you get half as many gongs as normal. Maloriak. Phase 1. Arcane Storm, raid-wide AoE. Interrupt. Release Aberration, don't interrupt this. Summons ads. Have an off-tank pick these up and kite them around the entrance to the room. They buff each other, so when you have a lot, you should kite hard. Remedy heals the boss, dispel or purge it. If the boss is red, stack up on the tank, this will split damage. If you get the debuff Consuming Flame, run out of the group. If the boss is blue, spread out far from people. Flash Freeze will freeze a random player, nuke down the ice block and keep that player healed. When the boss turns green, he'll start taking increased damage. Group up all the ads and AoE them down with the boss. Phase 2. He will summon the rest of the ads from Phase 1 if you interrupted any of the released aberration casts, along with 2 prime subjects. AoE them down with the boss. Once all the small ads are dead, the off-tank can move the 2 prime subjects away, and DPS can focus on killing the boss. Magma Jet will cause a line of fire to spawn towards a player. Move out of this. Absolute Zero will summon an ice orb that explodes when it gets too close to a player. Move out of this. Acid Nova, big AoE raid damage. Can't move out of this. Heal through it. On Heroic, a new Dark Phase will happen. It'll spawn a bunch of slime ads, which will put loads of pools on the ground for you to move out of. Off-tank, pick these up and kite them. DPS need to focus these down. You may want to interrupt the first release aberrations cast just so you're not getting overwhelmed. The boss will also cast Engulfing Darkness every 10 seconds, which is a frontal cone that stops healing for 8 seconds. Simply use cooldowns and heal the main tank in that 2-second window before the next cast. Nefarian. More like Nefarian fight. Begin this fight by jumping down. Tank the 2 bosses away from each other. Your raid will want to focus Onyxia first. Onyxia does a breath and a tail swipe. She will also periodically do a lightning discharge at her sides. You'll see electricity appear just before she casts it. The tank should turn the boss so this doesn't hit anyone. She will have a new special bar that notes her charge level. When this reaches 100%, it will cause a raid wipe. Nefarian will have a breath and a tail swipe. Whenever Nefarian loses 10% of his health, it'll do a big electrical AoE on the raid, and also raises Onyxia's charge bar by 25%. You want to nuke Onyxia, but still deal a decent amount of damage to Nefarian to make later phases easier. Around 80% on Nefarian is good enough to kill Onyxia. Ads will also spawn. You can CC them. There is no point killing these as they have way too much health. Instead, you want to kite and CC them until their energy runs out. This will cause them to enter a dormant state. If one of the dragon's breaths hits them, they'll go back to full health and energy. You may want to have a third tank for these on 25 man. When Onyxia dies, Nefarian will fly up and the platform will move down into the lava. 3 safe spots will be available with an ad on each one. You want to nuke these down and interrupt their casts. There will be tons of AoE damage in this phase, so you really want to hit those interrupts. On Heroic, some players will get the Explosive Cinders debuff. When this falls off, it'll explode and knock everyone back around you. You want to jump into the lava and move away by 8 yards before this debuff wears off, so you don't grief the raid. Once ads are dead, phase 3 will begin. All the ads from phase 1 will become reactivated. Have your off-tank pick these up and begin kiting them. Nefarian will cast Shadow Blaze Spark that will summon an orb that will slowly move towards one of the locations of one of the ads. Simply kite them away until they run out of energy. They will become reactivated again by the Shadow Blaze Sparks, just repeat kiting. Aside from the ads, this last phase is just a tank and spank. On Heroic mode, in phase 1 and 3, Nefarian will mind control players every 15 seconds. Your abilities will be replaced by 2 new ones. Free Mind and Siphon Power. Your character will run towards a portal. You want to spam Siphon Power and then use Free Mind before reaching it for a DPS and move speed buff.